The president is the chief executive officer of this corporation called the United States of America.
Can you handle the truth? Welcome to the Jordan Maxwell Show.
Okay, folks, this is Jordan Maxwell, and we're live again on the American Freedom Radio Network. You know, I want to clarify a few things first before we get into tonight's incredible subject. First of all, I want everyone to understand, I do not consider myself, nor am I, a patriot. I'm not a truther. I'm not a revolutionary. And for damn sure, I'm not an authority on anything. I consider myself to be an ordinary man pursuing extraordinary knowledge. So there's nothing special about me, and there's nothing highly academic about me. It's just that I have spent my entire life reading and studying and questioning, and happened by chance to have been blessed with being in the company of so many extraordinarily impressive, important people in my life. Not that I am important, but that, like Forrest Gump, I happen by chance to be, privileged to be in the company of some of the most important people on the earth, and was able to hear and learn and see what was actually going on at that level, at that top level in society. And so I decided I wanted to talk with the rest of the world about it. I was so impressed with the things that I have been learning over the past 60 years that I wanted to be able to share with my fellow men and my fellow countrymen the magnificent knowledge and connections and people and experiences that I've had, which I just want people to realize that how incredible America is, and how awesome this whole world that we live in is, where we came from, and what we're doing and where we're going. So I don't like to put myself, and I don't like putting others, but especially myself, into boxes. I'm not a patriot. As I said, I'm not a truther, even though I've been talking about and become well known because of my work of digging out the truth for the past 56, 57 years. But I'm not a revolutionary, and I'm not an authority on anything. I'm just fascinated with how much knowledge is out there that the world is not aware of. And so, that being said, I need to make a second point. And that is, I have been saying for many years that I am not an authority on anything, but the point being is that the world that you live in is far different than you think it is. I say that often, and people who know me and have heard me know I say that continually. The world does not work the way you think it does. Nothing is what you think it is. And there are so many deeper and far better understandings of the way the world, the earth, government, commerce, religion, the whole human society on the earth works totally different than you think it does. And this is why people are not able to do anything about the bad situation that the world is sinking into, and is sinking quickly into a dark place. And the reason why is because the people of the earth, not just of my own country, the people of my own country, but the people of the world have no way of doing anything. They have no power to make anything happen. So the problem being, and the reason why America in particular has no power, we can cry and complain, and we feel that we're free because we can go out on television and rant and rave in the streets with signs and talk about how how bad the system is, but there's nothing we can do about it. And the reason why is because knowledge is power. And without the knowledge of how things actually in point of fact work, then you're never going to be able to change or do anything to make it better. And I've said a couple of times before, if you own a Rolls Royce, but if you're out in the desert and it stops running, your air conditioning stops running and you're not going anywhere. Well, if you're not a Rolls Royce mechanic, then you're going to need help because you don't know how anything works. Well, that's the way America is today. The American people, along with probably the rest of the world, is equally as smart enough to know that the whole world is in trouble, the whole earth. But nobody seems to know where it's coming from. It's like the old, I remember a politician many years ago saying the situation in the world today is like a stereo when it first came out. I mean, it's all around you, but nobody knows where it's coming from. So that's the reason why I have been doing what I have for the past 56 years, personally trying to talk to people about how much they don't know and trying to point the way to where the information is so that for the first time, Americans, especially my fellow Americans, can understand how America works. And nothing is more further from the truth than how you think the world works. And so I've been trying to find the best guests that are far better at presenting this kind of deep and important material. And I've had many dear friends who are experts on this subject. And I will for sure be having more experts on this general subject of the occult or hidden way the world really works. But tonight I wanted to especially thank my guest for being with me because an incredible mind that he has and the way that he is able to explain deep and dark things. And I've often said that the world works on smoke and mirrors. Well, what does that mean, smoke and mirrors? Well, it just means that nothing is what you think it is. And this is why you keep butting your head up against the wall or a mirror, because you keep thinking you know what you're doing when you don't know what you're doing. So my guest tonight is named Kurtis. And I've talked with Kurtis before. I actually had him on the show before, but I'm going to have him on more now because his kind of information is, I feel, very important. I don't know anywhere near what he does, but I know enough to know the subject matter is important. And I've been looking at it and talking to experts for many years about this general subject of the occult or arcane, occult, hidden way the world really works. And so with that introduction, just realize I'm not the authority on anything, but I do have some really wonderful friends who are rather, highly intelligent on the things which I see, but they can explain better than me. I'm not the authority. But with all of that said, I hope Kurtis is with us. Are you there? Are you there, Kurtis?
Can you hear me okay, Jordan?
Yes, I can hear you just fine.
All right.
Okay, so as I've said before, I understand the occult, and the word occult simply means hidden. So I understand the hidden or the occult world of finance. I've been talking about it for many years. I know about the dark underpinnings of Western civilization, how government really works, how organized crime actually operates, and religion especially is my subject that I have always loved to talk about. But tonight I want to talk about the hidden or the arcane hidden world of money and finance, banking, and how money works and what it is. What are we talking about? What makes paper in your wallet important? What makes it important and valuable? I don't know. It's just paper. So that's why I've asked Kurtis to come on and explain to my audience so I can understand too, something about the hidden system of finance and the world that we live in. So I don't know if that's enough of an introduction. I don't know if that's enough of an introduction, but that's the best I can do.
Well, now I'm nervous.
Okay.
How in the world can I follow that? By the way, you've been at this as long as I've had the Spirit of God in me. I mean, 56 years. I took my first breath 56 years ago, and that was it. I mean, so you've been at it as long as I've been here.
Yeah, well, I started off in 1959. Just talking a little group discussions and mom and pop bookstores and little private meetings like that, talking about the government and the Federal Reserve and the Knights Templars and the Illuminati and the secret societies and where religions have come from, because I've always been interested in that kind of thing. But it wasn't until about the 80s, mid-80s, that I became aware of the concept of the difference between the United States of America, the Republic, and a corporation called the United States Incorporated, which is a company. And then from there, that opened up the doors, I'm saying in the mid-80s, that opened up the doors to, well, what is the value of money? And who prints the money? And where, what is really going on the earth today? And then I heard you, and I was blown away, so I'll let you try. Maybe I'll let you try and go from here. Yeah.
Well, first of all, I, like you, I don't feel like I'm an authority on anything, but I do. I'm here to entertain myself most of the time.
Yeah, me
because
too.
The stuff is so crazy that, I mean, the first 4 or 5 years into it, it was toxic as heck. But once I broke through a little bit of it and I started seeing the light of truth, then it didn't hurt so bad. But what's funny is, I mean, tonight and maybe in the future we're going to be talking about money, but money, I mean, as we believe it to be, as we think it is. And ultimately it comes back to probably an area where you're pretty strong. But I think money at this point on the entire planet is more, we should just call it what it is. We're using a certificate of indulgence that is granted by the Roman Catholic Church. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to. It's a certificate of indulgence. But I think that you just made a comment. I mean, I'm going to try to start extremely superficial on the very surface, so I can try to gather up as many people as possible before I get into the really strange stuff that I've discovered over the years that ties money back basically to our soul.
Yes.
So
yes.
I'll start really.
That is exactly what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Is the arcane and the dark secrets of money. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that's what I wanted to hear about.
Yeah, because I mean it's like a path. I got to break through I got to let people know where it is first. You said something just a minute ago. The United States versus the Republic and whatever. I want to start there just because I want people to understand a very simple concept. If you can understand this concept, especially with as much admiralty law as you've been into or commerce over the years, let's break this down into 3 very simple ideas. There's subdivisions within each one of these, but I want to just at least name the 3. So the United States. The United States is what I call a maritime republic, or it's pure commerce. It's a business. It's an organization, a trade union per se. And so the United States by itself is just a business. That's all it is. And whether it's overseeing a larger business, I don't know, but I'm going to call the United States a business. The United States of America is a country. It's a republic. And people have to recognize the fact that it's what they perceive it to be. It's a government with living people involved and things like that. By the way, it still exists. It hasn't gone anywhere like a lot of people believe it has. It's still there. But then there's the third thing that most people are really confused about, and that's America. America is a whole different ballgame. America is a geography. America is North America, South America, and Central America. America is called the Americas. It's plural. It's all of it. And it was actually claimed through what's called the doctrine of discovery by the Roman Catholic Church back in the 1400s. So the doctrine of discovery is about Christianity. They're laying claim through Christianity to everything that's happened in the Americas. So in the Americas, canon law rules. In the Americas, canon law rules. So, and basically the doctrine of discovery says that Spain and I believe it was Portugal basically rule over the Americas. So that being said, what's the difference between America and the United States of America? Well, North America has a specific republic within the geography of North America, not counting Canada. So the republic it includes like Illinois, Wisconsin, Indiana. That's the republic or the United States of America. Because America by itself is identifying basically Catholic property. America by itself. So the United States of America is identifying something completely different. And then, of course, the United States is within that, it's a private business that's operating completely separate. So to me, the United States is a business. The United States of America is a government or a country. And America is, well, it's Roman Catholic.
No doubt about that. No doubt.
That's how I like it. That's how I like to look at it. So
yeah.
Let's start with, you said money. I'm going to go with money all by itself first. And I'm going to use Webster's and I'm going to use Black's Law Dictionary for money, the definition of money. So let's do money right off the bat. This is out of Merriam-Webster, and I took it Merriam-Webster online. And here's what it says. Money. Something generally accepted as a medium of exchange, a measure of value or means of payment, such as officially coined or stamped metal currency, newly minted money. B, money of account. Paper money, handed paper money. 2, wealth reckoned in terms of money. 3, a form or denomination of coin or paper money. 4, the first, second, or third place winners, in other words, in the money, that type of thing. 5, persons or interests possessing or controlling, and the rest is a position of wealth or, okay. Ultimately, it's a medium of exchange. That's what money is supposed to be. A medium of exchange. Something where, and I like to use a lot of examples. So here's the way I like to describe my idea of money. It has to be a value for value exchange. Meaning, we're all born equal, we all have the value of 1. In other words, you, Jordan, equal 1, and I, Kurt, equal 1. And whatever we produce, that's our 1. That's our 1. It doesn't matter what it is. You have a value of 1 and I have a value of 1. If I want what you produce and you want what I produce, we exchange the 1. So you have my 1 and I have your 1. And we're both happy. In other words, there's no, I don't know, what's the word? There's no compromise. We don't compromise on that. You get all of my 1 and I get all of your 1, and we're completely satisfied with that exchange. That's a 1-to-1 exchange. Compromise would mean that, let's say, you got 99% of what you wanted, and I got 100%. Well, I'm okay, but you still have an outstanding 1% where you're kind of unsatisfied. Meaning that's an open door. Meaning it's somebody that can offer you that last 1% could drive a wedge between your agreement with me, because they're going to offer you the full 100% you're looking for. I think of it this way, a compromise. Compromising in a marriage. I mean, if I say that my wife is 85% of what I'm looking for in a woman, that's not a very good position, is it? Because there's 15% out there that if I can find that last 15% in somebody else, I'm going to jump ship. I'm going to go someplace else. And so I don't believe in compromise. I believe that when you make an agreement, you're agreeing to that 1-to-1 exchange. Here's the problem with the system as it is right now, that I see it. It's an energy-based system. Whatever you produce through your ability to produce your energy, the fact that you're alive, the fact that your heart's beating, that energy exchange, your production with what you can do with your energy, is traded for my production, what I can do with my energy. That's all it is. And what they've done is they've created a system where there's a man in the middle, the middleman, who doesn't offer any energy at all to the exchange. He doesn't offer anything, but he takes out. So if you and I make an agreement, we're pretty good if it's just you and I, but if a third party comes in and says, listen, I put you two guys together, so I'm going to extract 50% of the agreement. Well, then neither one of us actually have a true agreement because somebody came in and took or extracted energy. The easiest way for me to kind of explain this is, well, the Federal Reserve is the middleman. So here's a good picture in my head. Let's just say that you and I are neighbors. You're a potato farmer, and I'm a laborer. I dig holes for a living. So you ask me, you say, Kurt, can you come over today and dig a hole for me? And I say, absolutely. You know what I need in exchange of that labor, that hole, is I need a bushel of potatoes. So whatever the requirement of energy for you to create that bushel of potatoes, that's all I'm asking for the exchange of my energy to dig the hole. So when I finish the hole or manifest the hole, you got what you want, and then you hand me the bushel of potatoes. And now that's a one-to-one exchange. We're good. There's no debt. What they've done is they've created a medium of exchange because we can't do that. On a large scale, the way the world works, we can't exchange things that way. That's why a true barter system can't work on a global scale. My wife and I have, Amazon businesses or eBay businesses and have since about 2005. And there's no way that I can dig a hole in, Ireland. I can't go dig a hole in Ireland and exchange that energy for somebody in Ireland for what they have to offer me. So there's a medium of exchange called a Federal Reserve note that is being used in this world. Now, this is what's weird about it. That medium of exchange, there's no energy to it. It's dead. So when somebody comes in, when let's say the Federal Reserve is they're taking, let's say, extracting 50% for the use of their reserve note. The problem with that is that if you and I are making a one-to-one exchange, and let's use a dollar value for our labor. I'll dig the hole for $50, which would normally buy me a bushel of potatoes. So the $50 you offer me allows me to get those potatoes. So it's still a one-to-one exchange. We just call it $50 now. The problem is that the $50 doesn't have a full $50 value if somebody's extracting 50% of the energy of the $50. That means that if you give me $50 for me manifesting a hole in your backyard, if you give me $50, that's $50 because the Federal Reserve middleman took out his 50% share. The $50 you gave me now is only worth $25 in purchasing power. I lost 50% of my end of the deal because the Federal Reserve extracted its energy from that medium of exchange. So what you really have to give me, if we're agreeing to a $50 bushel of potatoes, you're going to have to give me $100 of Federal Reserve notes because the Federal Reserve is going to extract their 50%, which brings it down to $50 in purchasing power, and I can still get the bushel of potatoes. See, that's what the middleman does. The middleman extracts the energy. They've done nothing. They've put in nothing, but they're extracting out a source of energy. So we can never actually make payments. We can never actually pay each other the way it's designed. If there was no middleman, if there was no usury, which is what it's really called, they call it inflation, but it's ultimately just usury. If there was no usury, then everything that's ever produced would be an asset instead of a liability. One more example. I'm going to try to simplify this. It seems kind of difficult right now, but I'm going to use another example. I live in Rockford, Illinois. If the people of Rockford, Illinois decided to build a bridge and they floated a bond or did whatever they had to do to finance that bridge, if there was no middleman when that bridge was built, the bridge would be an asset to the community. But because there's a middleman that has already extracted his energy, the bridge is never an asset, it's always a liability. In other words, it never truly gets paid for. Somebody is always owed money on that bridge. So the community doesn't have an asset, it has a liability. And that's kind of how everything is working around the world, is that because there's a middleman extracting energy from us, from each and every one of us, and I'll get to that later, but because of that, the system is actually, it's dying. Kind of like what you were talking about earlier. It's dying. we're not going in a good place. And there's no way to recover. There's no way to recover. We can't recover. The system has to be terminated in order for us to be okay again. So, anyway, the money, a medium of exchange is all it is. But I want to go to Black's Law right now and talk about, and use their definition real quick. So I just used Merriam-Webster. It just says something generally accepted as a medium of exchange. That's Merriam-Webster. Here's Black's Law. Black's Law says money in usual and ordinary acceptation means coin and paper currency used as circulating medium of exchange. There it is, medium of exchange, and does not. Here it goes. This is Black's Law definition of money. It says, does not embrace notes, bonds, evidences of debt, or other personal or real estate. It says legal tender, near money, script, wampum, a medium of exchange authorized or adopted by a domestic or foreign government as part of its currency. But it says money it does not embrace notes, bonds, evidences of debt, or other personal or real estate. So a Federal Reserve note is not considered money. Right off the bat. It's a note.
I was going to say that it doesn't. It's not money because even on the face of the dollar bill, it says this. How does it say it? That this is. I'm trying to remember how it says it, but basically what is on the dollar bill, it says this is to be used to represent money. This is not a dollar, but this is representing something. So it's not really money. It's just a paper representing something.
Yeah, and ultimately, if you don't have to go too far back to find out where the money went, and that's probably a good place to go because again, money, it's just a medium of exchange that everybody believes or has faith in. Hence the full faith and credit idea. But you have to have the faith. I have to believe that when you gave me that $50 for me to dig the hole in your yard, I have to believe that the $50 will buy my bushel of potatoes. I have to believe it will. But it doesn't anymore because of that middleman. And that's the problem, is that when we lose faith in that system will collapse. It will collapse. Okay.
Let me throw this in too. I think this is going right along with what you're saying, and I think it will help the audience too. Suppose and people have heard me say this before, but maybe some haven't. Suppose I want my office painted, and you are a painting contractor. So you come and check the job and see what's required, and you give me a price to paint my office of $100, say, and I accept. We're talking about commerce and business. And then you come and paint my office, and when you're through, you turn around, and what do? As a contractor, you hand me a bill. And the bill is for $100. Well, you just handed me a bill for $100. I reach into my wallet and I pull out a $100 bill and hand it to you. So now you're happy because I paid you. No, I didn't pay you. I gave you a $100 bill. Why? Because you gave me a $100 bill. So I didn't pay you anything. I discharged the debt. I didn't pay the bill. So that's why you don't owe anything. You don't own anything. You don't own your home. You don't own your car. You don't own your boat. You don't own your plane. You don't own nothing, period. Why? Because you never paid for it. You discharged the debt, but you didn't pay the bill. So if you had given me a bill for $20, I give you a $20 bill. If you give me a bill for $100, I'll give you a $100 bill. So the bottom line is, I didn't pay you anything. I discharged the debt. Now you owe me $100, and I owe you $100, so we're even. Yeah, we're even. Neither one of us got anything, but you did the work.
Yeah, you got a painted office.
Yeah, I got a painted office. And you got something you think is worth $100, and go out and try and buy something, and you find it's only worth about $10. So, but that's the way it works, So I'm just saying that when you are giving people Federal Reserve notes, you're not giving them money. You are discharging a debt. Like if you walk across a carpet and touch a piece of steel, you get a charge. Well, that's what you do when you walk into Sears and you buy some clothes. You're going to get charged, and they expect you to pay the charge, and so it's a bill, and so it's just words and terms that are that we come to accept every day, and never really think about the implications of what we're doing. So I just wanted to throw that in.
No, I see. That's the thing is, we hear these words all the time. I mean, you end up in court, and there's a charge.
Yep.
But and we're going to get into that because I've discovered some things recently that by the time we're done with this stuff, all the Admiralty stuff, all that stuff is going to make sense. And by the way, it's really not scary. It's really and it comes down to one singular moment in your life. It really does. And that's when it goes really crazy, is when by the time people hear this stuff, they're going to go, wow, man, I mean, does Jordan really talk to that guy?
Yeah.
It's going to go really nutty, but because it's going to be the foundation of everything. But again, about that charge, about the idea of the charge, it's because everything, we do, even the word do, to do something, it implies, real-time action right now. You can't do something, then, you know what I mean? You're doing it now. So in other words, everything happens in the present moment. This is another hard concept for people. Everything we do in our entire life, it only happens now. We always are doing now. We can't do it yesterday, and we can't do it tomorrow. When the moment comes, we're doing it in that moment. So everything is in the present moment. And the word present also means grace. And the whole idea of the Christ, or the concept of the Christ, or the I am, also implies presence, meaning right now. So unless you have life in you, unless you're alive in this very moment, you can't do anything. Everything, all the energy that is provided for the system, as what they use, the term they use, is creditor. Mm-hmm. So all the energy is in the present moment. The creditor exists in life in the present moment. That's the creditor. That's the one that actually does the very thing that creates the charge. It's creating the charge. When I dig the hole in your yard, I'm doing it right now. And when I do it right now, until you pay me, there is a charge, a positive charge. My energy went into that hole. And in order for me to get back to equilibrium, I have to have that energy discharged. You have to pay me. In order for me to get back to equilibrium, I've just given you my energy. I need an equal exchange back to me so I get back to equilibrium. So, because right now I'm in the negative. I gave you this and I'm in the negative. And so in order, it doesn't matter what the medium is at this point. A bushel of potatoes is fine. But that's the whole idea. You got to give me something. There has to be a value for value exchange, and that's what people don't understand. When I hear the word creditor and debtor, I want to poop my pants because the creditor, the energy source is only in the present moment. We always only do things right now in the present. Now here's what's weird. The present moment is where all energy, where all things are made, where everything happens. That's the present. That's the grace of God. That's the Christ. That's I am. Not I will be or I was. It's I am. I am implies the present moment. So the creditor is the Christ. That's the creditor. That's the one that pays all the bill. You know what I mean? It pays everything because that's the only place things can actually happen, in the present moment. In 1582, what did Pope Gregory do? He created another timeline, the Gregorian calendar. He created another position, another timeline that the Roman Catholic Church claims as their own, the Anno Domini calendar. And where does and you know the stars better than most. Where does the Anno Domini fit into the Julian calendar? 13 days behind it right now.
Yep.
13 days behind. So if I lay claim to a character born to the Anno Domini Gregorian calendar of Pope Gregory of 1582, I'm claiming a position 13 days behind the present moment of the Julian calendar. The Julian calendar. So look at how weird that is. If the Julian calendar identifies the present day, the present moment in real time, where the creditor exists, then who the hell is 13 days in the past? Who's coming up behind you 13 days later but the debtor? In other words, if Kurtis Richard Kallenb, the birth certificated person, born to the Anno Domini Gregorian calendar 13 days after the present moment, if Kurtis Richard Kallenb lays claim to the hole that was dug in your yard, did he dig the hole? Hell no. I dug the hole. Kurtis Richard Kallenb is 13 days behind me claiming my work. So he's actually being extended credit by 13 days. He's being extended my energy for 13 days. Because I dig it right now, but 13 days from now, he's coming behind me 13 days in the Gregorian calendar. He's behind me 13 days taking my credit. Think about this. It's Wimpy saying, I'll gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today. This is the weirdest thing, is people have no idea that this split personality, these two positions, these two different calendar positions, the real-time, real-moment Julian calendar versus the calendar that's 13 days behind. There's a 13-day differential right now. And that's where all the interest lies. The interest is between the present moment where the Christ actually does the work, the I am does the work, the energy actually creates the energy, puts the energy in, and the character 13 days behind claiming that position. That's a note of debt. The guy in the behind, Kurtis Richard Kallenb, that birth certificated person owes the I am in the present owes him. There's your differential right there. The present moment generates the charge, and the guy behind is the one that has to discharge it, or vice versa, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Because the credit, think about it. I get a 13-day extension of credit. I'm claiming the whole right now, 13 days. You see what I'm getting at? I'm actually getting paid for the whole 13 days in advance. Remember, this is weird. This is a tough concept, but the present is the future to the past. The present is the future to the past. So right now is the future to 13 days from now.
Well, I remember coming across that more than one time, that the Catholic Church was changing dates, and during the Middle Ages, rewriting the calendar, and there was and I never understood why they were changing the dates and calendar. But what you were saying brings up another interesting point, that your body is a biological battery. If it wasn't for electricity, you couldn't move. So it's biological electricity, but electricity nonetheless. And so you're a biological battery. And then if someone's going to charge you, then if you can't deal with that charge, then they will put you into a cell. And and so that's what a battery is. So you put the energy into a cell. So you're going to jail. And but that's exactly right. But look if I do something in advance, if I get on a bicycle that's attached to a generator that's funneling energy into a battery, in other words, for future use, I could sit on a bike and pedal that thing and charge up that battery. So the energy from me, the biological being pedaling, created the energy that's in that battery, that's in storage in the battery for future use. And that's what I am. That's what the Christ is. See, the present moment is me doing the work, digging the hole in your yard right now. The funny thing is the Roman Catholic Gregorian Anno Domini character, 13 days behind me, is taking credit for that energy right now in his world, 13 days in advance. That's a loan. He's in debt to me for 13 days of my energy. But it's me. So I'm both the creditor and I'm the debtor through their character. I'm both. I'm both positions. I am the present, and Kurtis Richard Kallenb is 13 days behind me. Yeah, I get the general gist of it. But the thing that stands out in my mind is I know that the Catholic Church did change the calendar, and there was all kinds of arcane or occult or hidden significance to the banking world going on, in the Vatican. Because remember, I'm saying this to everyone, remember the Vatican has dominated Europe for over 2,000 years. 1,600 years the Vatican has dominated Europe. What I wanted to say was that Rome has dominated Europe for about 2,300 years, starting with the Caesars of Rome, and then later about 1,600 years from backwards was the Vatican dominating Europe, and so therefore Rome is still dominating Europe. Now it's the Holy Father. Well, it's the same thing as the Caesars of Rome. But if you think about how Rome has dominated Europe for 2,300 years, and then for the past 1,600 years it's continued to dominate Europe, it's called the Vatican, which means that the Vatican and Rome has dominated Europe for 2,300 years. But what you don't think about is that Europe itself has dominated the planet for 2,300 years. And so all roads lead to Rome, period.
Absolutely. And what is it that we're talking about money, but since it's only a medium of exchange, what is it ultimately that they're after? They're after the labor. Because the labor is the product, the energy of each and every one of us. Whether it's your intellect, your product, the things, the articles, the things you put out, the knowledge you put out, that's a product of your brain, which is energy, and you put that product out, and that's through your labor. It's intellectual, but it's still labor. And that's what they're capturing through the medium of exchange, is the energy. It doesn't matter whether it's me digging a hole or you putting out a book. It's the same damn thing. And so they're capturing the labor or the energy or the productivity of man through a very simple mechanism. It really is, and it's our belief. It's our belief, and it's going to come down to something so horrifying. Ultimately, it's going to come down to the concept of believing in salvation, and I'll get into that too. By the time we're all done with this, because salvage, the concept of salvage, i.e., admiralty, a ship, a shipwreck, and salvation are one and the same thing. So when admiralty is the law of salvage, and of course salvation is the same darn thing. So we're gonna get into that, but I just want to be clear that the margin between the real here and now. Again, remember the word present and grace are the same thing. And I'm not a religious guy, and by the way, I'm also not a patriot. Because that's the separation of church and state. And you can't exist with the separation of church and state, because the state is the father and the church is the mother, and you can't divide those two because you're a product of both. You have to have both, the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and your mother's DNA and your father's DNA in order to exist. So you cannot separate church and state, which is what they've done on paper. But again, back to this, this is such a simple idea. I have a tendency to make things really difficult.
Well, I had a rabbi not too many years ago make that point to me that it says in the scriptures, to honor your father and your mother, and he said your father is government and your mother is the church and religion. That's the implications of the scripture, to honor your father and your mother, meaning the one that gave you a presence on the earth is government, and not the one that created you, but the one that gave you a position on earth is your father, and the one that nurtures you with that position is the church and religion, your theology. So your mother and your father is the government and the church. And so, like you said, you can't divide them because they're it's mother and father.
The Summa Theologica, the Roman Catholic Church doctrine, the stuff they use in seminary, Saint Thomas Aquinas. I believe that, and if people want to go to this, I've been at it long enough to remember the page number. It's page 4,995, the Summa Theologica. They actually describe what mom and dad bring to your life. Father brings form or status, standing, or position, your societal position.
Of course.
And mother brings substance, which is the material or the matter. So dad is subject, mom is matter, subject matter. So the combination of father and mother together are called subject matter, which is the res, or the existence of each and every one of us. But that's right out of church doctrine, and they describe the mother, all the products from mother's womb, and of course, father gets status or standing. That's why what you just said about the rabbis saying, honor thy father and mother, what's interesting about that is recently, the concept of standing. People said, I've been trying to change my status or standing for a while. You don't have to. What you have to understand is that you need to bring those two pieces together. You need to bring those two pieces, father and mother, back together, because when you do that, it's called good standing. And good standing also has the same legal definition as honor. So when you have good standing, you're in honor. And people don't realize it, but good standing is the father's side attached to the mother's side. Now you're in honor with both mom and dad. But you need to not leave one of those out. Patriot means father, and of course the mother side, or the matrix, is pure mother. You can't have one or the other. You can't choose one or the other. That's separation. That's separation. Right. Yep. But and again, back to the concept of money. These guys have known the energy system since the beginning. They don't care what you call it. They don't care what denomination. They don't care about any of that. All they care about is what you believe and how they can get you to believe it, to give up your labor. To give up your labor so they can get produced what they want. And it's a very simple thing for them, because all they have to do is make sure that we have great entertainment and we have,
plenty of
food.
Alcohol.
Food. Yeah.
That's why we have liquor stores on every corner in every city. Every corner has a liquor store, and it's crammed filled with all kinds of alcohol and liquor and cigarettes and cigars. But it's it's pretty much on every damn corner. Why? Because we want to make sure that the people are drugged. And if they're angry and upset and they're frustrated, they can always have a couple of drinks and forget it and go watch basketball. And so I've always noticed that. And Dick Gregory, my dear friend Dick Gregory, once said, everything is changing prices. I mean, things that cost you 10 cents many years ago cost you $2 today, except in alcohol. Alcohol is still just about the same price it always was. It hasn't gone up that much in price at all. It's pretty easy to get, even if you are, a derelict or sleeping in an alley, you can always bum a few dollars off of somebody and get a bottle. So, alcohol is like, Joe Kennedy. Joe Kennedy, the great merchant, the Kennedy father. He said alcohol was made to be sold, not consumed. And I thought, well, that's pretty interesting from a guy who was big in the liquor industry. He said alcohol was made to be sold, make money off of it. You don't drink that stuff. And so, when I look at the way the world works, it's the same thing. Nothing is what you think it is. And when you start breaking down words and terms and like I always say, you have to go to court. Why do you go to court? Well, you play tennis on a court. And how do you play tennis on a court? You play with a racket. And so, and then you find out, no, the whole thing is a racket. And then you begin to see how, what is a bank? You have to put money in a bank. Where do you find a bank? A bank's on both sides of a river. It's called a river bank. And what does a river bank do? It directs the flow of the currency. And so, it's just a ebb and flow of a current of your labor. And so, I remember a Jesuit priest a long time ago. We were talking about this kind of thing many years ago. But anyway, this Jesuit priest just casually said to me, well, in any family, the father manufactures, and the woman is in labor creating the product. And so, so you come down your mother's birth canal, implying water, and then her water breaks, and you come out as a maritime admiralty product. But I thought that was interesting, you know.
At the top of the hour.
I thought I heard the music.
That's a perfect segue for me to start on that path. Because the most important stuff is what you just said right there. But if we can get into the nuts and bolts of that, because everything started in 1933 here, when FDR basically said, today is the day of national consecration. He actually created the holy ground, a day of national consecration, a holy nation. A nation made up entirely of holy ground. And that's you just described it, and whether you know it or not, you just described the holy ground, which is the land of your soul. And that, by the way, is where the certificate of indulgence comes into play. And again, in 1933, FDR, when he created that nation, he actually said today's a day of national consecration. I mean, is Illinois, in Indiana and Wisconsin and Arizona and everywhere out there by you, is that one nation? Hell no, it's not. So how in the world do you say today's the day of national consecration, as if only one existed? It's because he created one in that moment, and it's very specific to what they did, and he generated these certificates of indulgence or deeds to that land as of 1933, and a birth certificate came out that year.
Yep.
And then I can go. That's where I want to go with this conversation.
Yeah. Well, I'm telling you, there's a lot there. And the other thing that bothers me about it is because that was in 1933.
Yeah, 33. Yeah, 33. Absolutely.
Anyway, I guess we'll be back soon.
Welcome to the world's meeting place. American.
It's practically narcotic.
Freedom.
Oh, yes. I like very much.
Radio.
You're an American institution.
American Freedom Radio.
Can you handle the truth? Welcome to the Jordan Maxwell Show.
Okay, folks, I guess we're back on the air, and my guest tonight is Kurtis, and we're talking about the occult or arcane subject of money and how governments work and all of the strange stuff that we Americans are never allowed to know. No one teaches it in school. There's a very good reason why they don't teach these things in school, because the teachers have no idea in the world what they're hearing. Teachers have never heard any of this. And so it's always been the same thing in any tyranny. Anytime somebody wants to take over and run the plantation, you don't let the people living on the land know what you're doing. So all of this has been kept from us purposely so that we would not know how our government works, how money works, how our churches and religions and synagogues and all of the other institutions that we humans have built up to control each other. I mean, I just remember as a kid hearing the plight of man's inhumanity to man. Well, my God, it's everywhere now. Mankind has given itself over to institutions, ideas, and concepts, and they have no idea in the world where the words come from. They're not able to fathom how money works. And we were talking about labor and how the church is always been in charge of your labor. Well, keep in mind, the church is there when you're born, when you get married, and when you die. So they bring you in, they nurture you while you're here, and when you leave, they own everything from day one. So the other thing I wanted to bring out too, that I feel is very important to say at this point, is that when we look at Washington D.C. and look at the history of that area we call Washington, D.C., you can see we today, the Americans, U.S. is nothing more than a regurgitation, redoing of the Holy Roman Empire. Well, America is the ancient Roman Empire come back to life because, first of all, the history books will tell you that the center of power, the very seat of power in the Roman Empire was on a hill, and it was called Capitoline Hill. And today we, here in America, we have a Capitol Hill. And the history books will tell you that in order for Caesar to officiate over the Roman Empire, he had to, quote, go up on the hill. And so many history books talk about when Caesar was up on the hill, the Capitoline Hill, or Capitol Hill. Well, hell, that's what we have. We have a Capitol Hill, and we hear these pundits and paid prostitutes talking every night on radio and television about the president was up on the hill today, et cetera, et cetera. Well, what are you doing up on the hill? Well, he's presiding over the Roman Senate. So it's the Senate and the people of Rome up on the hill. And and even that one particular area that we call the Federal Enclave or the Federal Enclave, that 10 miles square, whatever it is, we call Washington, D.C., District of Columbia. Originally, that 10 miles square in the very beginnings, way back before the founding of the U.S., the people who owned that 10 miles square called it Rome, R-O-M-E, Rome. It was referred to as Rome. I just think it's interesting that they carved out a 10 mile square and call it Washington, D.C., and changed the name from Rome to the United States, to the District of Columbia. So what we're talking about here is not, I've said this before and I want to stress it again. We're not talking about a Jewish conspiracy or the Illuminati conspiracy. We're talking about the quite simple way the world works. Rome dominates the earth, period. All roads lead to Rome. So there's where we need to, get some correct understanding. It's an extraordinary story of betrayal and ignorance and ill-informed public that does not realize America is under a Roman Catholic domination. If you don't think so, go back and look at the words and the terms with the founding of this country, and especially all the obvious things. So if there's on the web, under image, if you go on the web under image, you will see quite literally hundreds of pictures of the popes and cardinals and all the big shots in the Catholic Church are right in the middle of the American government. They are having dinner and laughing and talking and enjoying themselves in New York, the Empire State. And they are right in the middle of America's domination of currency, money, government. It's the Roman Catholic Church and the Vatican with its military arm, the Jesuits, who are actually behind all of this brilliant strategy and brilliant thinking that has given birth to the matrix that we in the world today live under. I believe it all goes back to Rome. Like I said, all roads lead to Rome. So that's my feeling about it. I was born and raised in the Catholic Church. All of my family were Catholics. I'm not saying the Catholic people are bad. I'm talking about the history of the corporation, the history of the operation out of the Vatican. It has nothing to do with the poor Christian and poor Catholic people. I'm talking about the business of religion. And this is why the mafia, so close to Roman Catholicism and the Roman Catholic Church, the mob always talks about is just business. And this is why every time some big shot mafiosi dies in Chicago and New York, the Catholic Church has major, big burial services and all kinds of accolades from the Catholic Church about what a wonderful man Al Capone was, what a wonderful man all of these great organized crime figures. They're all buried in with the Catholic Church. So, like I said, the church is there when you're born, when you get married, and when you die. The church dominates the world, period. And so that's what I want. And all of this was dreamt up by Jesuit theologians and international gangsters out of Europe. All of these concepts we're talking about tonight, very, very dark stuff. But you have to understand the church is involved in Europe for 1,600 years, and that's where all of this stuff comes from. America is merely the latest rendition of the Roman Empire. And I hope Kurtis is still there with us.
Yeah. I love this. And remember that Ignatius Loyola, the guy that probably founded the Jesuits, remember what his entire goal was. His goal was to capture the soul of man.
Yes, I remember reading that. And you know what? I thought about that. I don't know if they do it anymore, but there was a time when a baby was born while it was still in the hospital. The mother was in, quote, laboring to create the product that her husband manufactured. But when the baby was born, they would take the feet of the baby and put ink on it and stamp it on a page. So it wasn't a handprint; it was a footprint. And I thought, is that why they're trying to register your soul? Because that's what your bottom of your foot's called, your soul. And so I just see that there's a lot of dark stuff going on in what we call religion and commerce and banking. And it's just a system that's developed by humans. And I would go even a step further and say I think that we are living in a system that was designed by a demonic force, something that is not of this world. Something I call preternatural, not supernatural, but preternatural, meaning not of this world. I mean, you ask any Catholic or any child, well, where's God? And they point up, out there into the sky. Well, God's out there in heaven. Well, do you believe in angels? Yes. And where are angels? Well, angels are out there with God in heaven. Well, I got to tell you, God and the angels then are obviously extraterrestrial. And it's beginning to look more and more the more I look at this. Yeah, it's beginning to look like the whole entire story of religion is based on extraterrestrial influence, driving us and guiding us. And we think we're talking to God, and we think we're worshiping God, and it's an incredible story of betrayal. I think the ultimate story about God is that there are extraterrestrials here and that our universe is teeming with life, and somebody's come here a long time ago and checked us out and thought, you know what, these people are pushovers. They don't know what they're doing. So why don't we come in and run the whole earth for them, and they will work and they will dig up the gold and they'll make money for us and they will do all this stuff for us. And when we're through, we'll just bury them. So that's what I think is going on now. I think that we are being led by extraterrestrial or higher intelligence in the universe. I mean, I don't care if you want to call it God or whatever you wish to call it, but all the ancient religions of the world recognize the fact that there's a higher power in the universe and there's a higher power in our life. And so that's what we're really up against. And unless people realize it and realize the church today, the whole Christian church, Judaism, and the Muslim religion are all three part and parcel to something very, very dark and something very big and very old. And we need to wake up and find out your life, your money, your banks, your educational institution, everything that you depend on in your country and in your life has been manipulated by a higher power. And that's why I love to be able to bring to people the knowledge about how this stuff really works. And again, I want to thank Kurtis for trying to help us to understand a very dark subject.
Jordan, what's the if you, off the top of your head, I already know what I'm asking, so I already know the answer, obviously. But you're familiar with the circumpunct?
Somewhat, but I don't recall.
Okay, the circumpunct obviously is it's a circle with a dot in the middle.
Okay,
that's a circumpunct. One of the oldest symbols for God ever.
Was simple. Was a circle with the dot in the center.
Yeah, and now look at this. Look at how strange. I mean, I'm going to go into Admiralty and all that stuff right now, very simply, because you're talking about the mother's birth canal, the waters of mother, and things like that.
Yep.
Look at how strange this is. The circumpunct, if you can envision that a circle being the ovum or the egg of the female, and the dot in the middle being the sperm of the male. In other words, a fertilized egg is God, because that's the act of creation, is it not?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
It is. And so just the concept of fertilization and creation is an act of God all by itself. What's really funny about that circumpunct, or about a fertilized ovum, is that it's the only time ever where the male and the female actually they share the same time and space. It's a singularity. It's the only time ever where a man and a woman actually share the same space with their DNA.
Yeah. And I get that. I understand that. That's really interesting.
And so when Heavenly Father, and I'm going to get kind of gross here for a second, comes down and plows the field of Mother Earth.
Well, no, but listen, that's exactly where the concept of God the Father comes from.
You better believe it.
Back into the Babylonian, Sumerian, and the ancient Egyptian systems, especially in India and the Hindu system, one of the main names of God in the ancient Hindu was a god named Rain, R-A-I-N, Rain. And that was a name of a god, and he was referred to as God the Father. And he was impregnating Mother Earth with the sacred fluid. And so when he would impregnate Mother Earth with the sacred fluid, which we today call rain, and therefore she gave birth to all kinds of life, because God the Father had impregnated Mother Earth, Mother Nature. That's where the whole idea we get of God the Father. I mean, when you get into religion, there's another whole subject we could spend all night on where these ideas have really come from. It's an extraordinary story of how much we don't know about our religions and government and commerce and all the rest of it. But let's get back to what you were saying. I just wanted to make that point that Rome is still alive. We call it America. So, and Washington, D.C. is still the Roman Empire. And the position that I was there in England, to York, England, where you see the statues of Caesar in front of churches and buildings. Well, that was the main headquarters for the Roman Empire when they went into Britannia, was the city of York, England. And so when the Vatican and all of its international banking cartels and all this dark stuff was moving to the New World, they came to the New World, which is us, and they set up their operation, call it New York. And so New York was the empire, and the Empire Strikes Back. Now we're getting into George Lucas and Indiana Jones and all that. It's all one story. It's all very deep, very dark, and very mystical, but fascinating for me. I love this kind of research, but it really does imply something very, very evil is afoot.
It's the greatest story ever told.
Yeah, it's the greatest story ever told. It's not the greatest collection of historical facts. It's a story. And once you understand the Bible is a story, it's the greatest story ever told. But once you begin to see what the story really is and see how it's a metaphor, then it becomes really interesting. Now you're seeing maritime admiralty law. You're seeing all the court system. You're seeing the labor, the control of labor, like the mafia. The mob is very big on controlling the labor unions. The carpenters union, the painters union, and the Soviet Union, and now the European Union. And where was the European Union, the paperwork for the European Union signed? Where was the official day and the official signing of all the different governments in Europe come together to sign the European Union? If it wasn't in a church in a in a Catholic church in Rome. The pictures are there on the web. You can see it everywhere. Yeah, all the big nations sent their presidents and all their officials to Rome to a very big, beautiful Catholic church where they, up on the altar, they were sitting there, all the officials of European, setting up the European Union, and they were signing all the papers with the cardinals and all the church officials there. So this whole idea of the European Union is a Vatican fascist Nazi operation, big time, in your face. And there's all kinds of proof of that the European Union today is nothing more than a Nazi Vatican operation to reestablish the Holy Roman Empire over the whole earth. But you can't do anything with the whole earth unless you get rid of America first, because it's the biggest guy on the block. And that's why we're in so much trouble. They're trying to destroy the American ideal, the American people, and put us into prisons and put us into stupidity and ignorance so that we don't understand how our money works, how our government works. The whole thing is really a terrible shame. So
yeah, and it's funny because what I've kind of discovered over time was through the words of the Pope himself. What's funny is when I want to get my way, I use the Pope's words. I always use the Pope's words because I can see where I can agree with it. I mean, I did it in one of my son's cases, court cases. I used the Pope's words, and believe it or not, they used the word innocent. My son was found innocent because I used the Pope's words from the position of father. So I used the Rerum Novarum that was written somewhere around the 1880s by the Pope claiming the father position over my son, and because I claimed to be the father, my son was actually found innocent. And it's strange because the Pope is claiming to be the father of the entire planet, basically, because all the children are ultimately illegitimate or bastard children, and they are. In fact, I'm about to prove that. One last thing I'll say before I get into this, because it's kind of fun. You'll like this, actually. But if people that are listening to this right now, if they're near their computer, type in Vesica Pisces, that's Vesica, Pisces, Piscis, as in Pisces, the stars, Vesica Pisces, and then type in Washington Monument. What you're going to see is an aerial view of the Vesica Pisces. And the Vesica Pisces is where two circles intersect.
Yep.
And what's funny is that the Washington Monument as a phallic symbol is coming right up through the vagina.
That's it.
And what's crazy...
That's exactly what it is. The Washington Monument is the male erection, and it connects directly to the female ovaries, or the Oval Office.
Yeah, but if you look, this aerial view looking right down on top of it, they also show not only is the Vesica Pisces there, but the circumpunct is there.
Yep.
Because you're looking right down on top of the Washington Monument, which is the dot in the middle of the circle. So all this stuff is, these guys that were fighting the Catholic Church, I mean Washington and all these other esoteric, Freemason guys and all this other stuff, before they were co-opted by the Jesuits and what have you, they had their own version of reality, which is probably more real, it's more nature-based. But, so, I mean, they put all these symbols out there for us to recognize that this is all about nature. Nature is God. God is part of nature. It has nothing to do with this man-made religion stuff. So, but that's the war. The war is for your mind. And that's what's funny is, and again, if you look at the Vesica Pisces, you're going to see the Jesus fish in there too.
And during the Middle Ages, all over in the Middle Ages, you would always see Jesus in the almond or the female ovaries, and all of that was all part of the art of the church. And my God, that's a whole subject, completely a whole different subject when you get into the hidden sex of religion. I mean, I can give you another 3 hours just on that in relation to Judaism and Christianity and Islam. All three are based completely on sex. And of course, you can go back to the parent of all three of our major world religions today: Judaism, Christianity, and the Muslim religion. All three are based almost directly on Hindu. The Hindus gave all the symbols, ideas, and concepts to all three religions. But nobody seems to want to talk about that, the Hindu connection to Islam and America, and to Christianity and Judaism. But Judaism itself is just crammed filled with Hindu. All the words and terms and symbols, all of it goes back to the ancient Hindu. So, I mean, you know, when you're looking at money and looking at all the arcane, strange, dark stuff about money and labor and the control of labor and then the control of people's minds with religion, this entire world that we live in is nothing more than a cesspool of ignorance and stupidity, and it's frightening because you know there's no place for us to come to. There's no place for us to go to. You know,
I'm going to read something to you real quick. That you'll actually. I hope it puts a smile on your face, because some of the things I've done recently, just in the past, let's say, few months. I actually have a letter here from the Department of Justice that basically says. I'll read it. It's just, even I'm smiling right now. It says, and this is from the Department of Justice, by the way. It says, "Dear friend." The Department of Justice is calling me a friend.
Oh, yeah.
Which means I'm not an outlaw. So, and very few people, I've only seen this like three or four times in my entire life where somebody was considered a friend by the federal government and Department of Justice. Look at this. It says, "Thank you for your recent letter to the Attorney General. We reviewed the information," and by the way, the information that they reviewed was my birth record. My birth record, and something I said about it, which is going to lead me up to this certificate of indulgence here. But it says, "We reviewed the information you provided, and it appears that this matter does not involve federal law and or the Department of Justice." So the federal government is I'm no longer an enemy of the state because of something I did. How crazy is that?
I've heard about this, but I want to know more, because I've heard this before, that you as a U.S. citizen are considered to be an enemy of the state unless you are actively engaged in military and law enforcement. But if you're not actively, if you're retired, then you're out. But if you're actively engaged in military and police and law enforcement, then you are a friend to a government. If you are not actively engaged in military or law enforcement, then you are considered by law to be an enemy of the state. And so,
and what it is it's sort of a defense position. It's a defensive. In other words, remember that all this stuff, when you hear the word issue of national security.
Yes.
Well, I mean, everybody's
what is an issue.
But I mean, it's a security issue. It's actually a share of stock in a company. So it's an issue of national security because the financing of the United States is the security of the United States. So this is not about, you know, what people think it is. An issue of national security can be a guy wearing fatigues overseas, or it could be a stock share for a corporation. An issue of but it's a nation. It's a security issue for a specific nation that FDR created in 1933 when he said today is the day of national consecration. So he created a holy ground, a place where deeds would be issued for holy ground, and that's what the birth record is. It's a deed to basically holy ground, the land of your soul. Your DNA is the land of your soul. So here we go. This is kind of fun, and I'm gonna try to keep it really simple because we can always come back on this, but I want to get this out tonight. And we talked about it a little bit, I think, last time, but here's what's weird about this. The concept of child sacrifice, the concept of a savior or a sacrificial lamb is going to come into play. And by the way, this all fits into the concept of certificate of indulgence or the financing, because this very thing I'm about to say is what is the entire system in a nutshell. So here we go. So again, mom walks into a hospital, pregnant. In other words, she's carrying a package in her womb. And does she stop by customs when she goes into the hospital? Of course, you know enough about the Knights Hospitalers, or the Knights of Malta, to know that they were there to receive Christian pilgrims, correct?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Okay. So a hospitaler, the Knights Hospitalers, I believe the Knights of Malta actually are the ones that lay claim to most hospitals in the world, because they're there to receive new Christian pilgrims. So here we go. Mom walks into a federal hospital or a hospital carrying a package. She does not stop by customs to declare the package, does she? No. She delivers the package inside that territory, wherever that is, the hospital. But so does she call customs right then and there and say, hey, listen, I'm declaring this newborn? No, she doesn't. So there's no declaration there. They wrap baby up and mom and dad take baby back home. Do they call customs before they remove baby from that territory and say, hey, I'm declaring my new son, my new daughter? No. So there's no declaration. And you got to think about this. You're in this territory, and basically you've never declared going in or out of that thing that happened right there. So there's no record of baby Jordan anywhere. So what is the record for? Well, the record is an event. It just marks the day or an event or some happening. They're not really saying it's anything specific. Well, what is left behind in the hospital? I'll use me as an example. So my mom goes into the hospital carrying a package. She delivers baby Kurtis in the hospital, doesn't declare baby Kurtis. My dad doesn't lay claim to me. Nothing happens. They take me home. There's no record of me even existing at this point. But what does my mom leave behind in the hospital? She leaves three things. She leaves some paperwork that has a title, Kurtis Richard Kallenb on it. She leaves that behind. She also leaves some DNA. In other words, the very essence of my existence, the fetal tissue. It's called afterbirth. And so she leaves behind my fetal tissue, and she leaves behind her maternal afterbirth. So inside the afterbirth, there's two different DNA. There's my mom's DNA and my DNA in the afterbirth. So there are three different things left behind in the hospital that go basically abandoned. So she abandons the title because she doesn't take that with her. She abandons my DNA, even though baby went home with mom and dad. My fetal tissue is left behind, and my mother's DNA is left behind as well. So here's what's so strange about this. Now we're going to go back into the concept of admiralty. My mother's DNA, I'm going to back up a little bit here because we don't have a lot of time, but we have enough time for this. We're going to go back to the idea of the circumpunct, the circle with a dot in the middle. When my dad's sperm fertilizes my mother's ovum in my mother's womb, that is the beginning. That's where my father's DNA and my mother's DNA blend, and through dedifferentiation and all this other stuff, it becomes unique DNA to me. It becomes my DNA. Is it my father's DNA? No. Is it my mother's DNA? No. It's unique because it's a combination of both, and it's my property. That's the first of my kind. That's the beginning of my existence. So within 21 days of that, it's called a zygote at this point. That zygote is my DNA now, exclusively mine. Within 21 days of that fertilization, the heart, there's enough of a heart there to actually receive a signal from wherever that signal comes from. The Pleiades, some star system, I don't know, and I'm not going to pretend to know. But the heart starts to beat when it receives that signal. So you got two different things happening here. The beginning of the new DNA, which is the fertilized ovum or the zygote, and now you have a separate heartbeat separate from mother's. There's the first of the zygote, then there's the beginning of the heartbeat, and then finally, when baby comes out of the womb, there's the first breath, which is called an inspiration, or the breath of God enters the baby, separating baby from mother completely. So that it's the separation from mother that is the beginning of your time in this realm on this earth. It's the first breath that is when you are completely separate from mother. Now, here's what's crazy about all that. That's baby. What about the afterbirth? What happens to that? That's what's left behind in the hospital. Baby goes home with mom and dad, never to be heard from again, until they need to call baby into court. But the point is that the afterbirth, the fetal tissue, is an exact, it's my DNA exactly. So that also appears to have been abandoned in the hospital. And my mother's DNA. What's interesting about my mother's DNA is that my mother's DNA is not a combination of mom and dad, is it? It's just my mom. Yeah, this is where it gets nutty. I'm going to go biblical on you. My mother's DNA is born to a virgin because no biological earthly father had anything to do with the birth of that maternal afterbirth. When it came out of my mother's womb, they call it born alive. Legally, it's called born alive, and it's a separate legal person. So that child, that legal issue, the maternal issue, has no earthly father. It's an immaculate conception. It's pure. It is. I know it sounds funny, but that's Jesus. That's the sacrificial lamb. It's not born of an earthly father, and it is sacrificed. That's the sacrifice. That's the child sacrifice that they're still making, by the way. It's not the baby that's sacrificed like a lot of Christians are screaming about. It is the actual afterbirth that is sacrificed. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
And that's my mother's DNA. Because the Roman Catholic Church does not lay claim to the product of mom and dad. They only lay claim to the female. So my mother's DNA is only passed on between females. In other words, the maternal afterbirth is a product of what's called the mitochondrial lineage of mother to mother to mother to mother. There is no biological father in the mitochondrial lineage. It's all female, which is the Roman Catholic Church. In other words, it is the female church. So the maternal afterbirth is the only part that the Roman Catholic Church is claiming. They're not claiming baby, and they're not claiming the fetal afterbirth tissue. They're only claiming the vessel, the tissue itself, from my mother. And that's the problem, is that the title left behind in the hospital, Kurtis Richard Kallenb, Kurtis Richard Kallenb can go either for my mother's DNA or the fetal tissue. And by the way, the entire banking system is built upon this, because it's built upon the sacrifice, the sacrificial lamb. That is what the entire, the certificate of indulgence is based upon. So when you have that vessel, when you have that DNA on your side, you have Jesus on your side, and it basically is an indulgence. It pays the bills. There's no outstanding debt. Remember, Jesus died for your sins.
That's right. Yep.
And that's what this is. If you know how to reattach to that vessel, if you know how to pull that vessel back into your world, then Jesus is in your world and acts as that sacrifice. And I know this sounds funny because I'm not a religious guy, but I'm talking science here. That maternal afterbirth is the full discharge of everything you do in your entire life, but it has to be connected to you. If it's not connected to you, it becomes all the problems in your world. If it is connected to you, then you're basically safe. It's you got to think of it as like a ship that is out there, and it finds you in the sea of commerce and it pulls you out of the water. I mean, doesn't Jesus walk on water?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Just like a boat stays on the surface of the water, a vessel stays, a boat, and that's exactly what happens. I believe that the story of Noah is the story of the sea of commerce coming over the top of the world, not real water. I'm talking about the sea of commerce, and the only way you can survive such a flood, i.e., the sea of commerce. I mean, if the whole world is covered in the sea of commerce, what do you need to survive? In other words, your only salvation would be if you had a boat. You need a boat.
Yeah, you need a ship or a boat.
Yeah, you need a ship. And when you have the maternal afterbirth, which has its own name, has its own title, when that ship is registered back to you properly, then you have your own salvage vessel. You actually have Jesus on your side, so every time you fall in the Sea of Commerce, your own vessel, your own salvage ship comes and saves you. If you don't have a ship to save you and you fall in the water, then you get salvaged by somebody else's ship, and a salvage lien is then placed against that action. So that's where, we could go into this at a later date, but when you have your own salvage vessel, i.e. Jesus, on your side, you never have to worry about the commercial world. Because they're never going to have a salvage lien, i.e. charges. You accept the charges, Kurt? You accept the charges, Mr. Kallenb? I'm never going to be brought into a courtroom again because I have my own vessel. I have my own salvage vessel. I have Jesus on my side. When I fall in the water, the Sea of Commerce, my boat's right there to pull me out. I'm good to go.
You know that this also has connections with the Jewish religion, where the mother is paramount when you're finding out who is a true Jewish descendant. It goes to the mother, not the father.
And that's why you need to stay connected. In other words, what is the flags or the sigils of the Mideast? You have the crescent moon and the star. Mm-hmm. That is the Madonna and Child. The star is the Christ, and the moon itself is the mother. That's so you right. So you have the Madonna and Child is the star and the crescent moon.
This is why also that the moon is always connected to romance. It's true, yeah. Because the moon is romantic, meaning romance, with bringing in women and romance. The moon, and of course, the moon has a lot to do with the woman's periods, and it draws water. I mean, there's all of this goes back to ancient religious occultism in the Jewish world and the Middle East. In the Roman world, especially in the Greek and then Roman world, and all of this implies that there's a bigger picture on how the earth works and how the world runs, and what banks are, what police are, how all of this stuff is connected behind the scenes. And that's why I'm always saying on all my shows that you really don't appreciate how the world really works until you get someone who's explaining all the dark intricacies of the way we live and the way we live life, with the words and the terms and the powers that are over us. It's a world of knowledge that most people will never be privy to know about.
You just said something right there. And early, right when you were starting the show tonight, you said knowledge is power. What people don't realize is that the word information, if you go into the Black's Law Dictionary, you'll see that information and the word knowledge are one and the same. And information is exactly what mother signs when she's filling out those forms. She becomes the informant. So she's creating the very information that provides what? Intimate knowledge of your existence, because that information is tied to your DNA. That's the most intimate knowledge there can be, because it's the essence of your existence. It's the knowledge. It's knowledge of your essence. It doesn't get any more intimate than that. So so the word knowledge and information are one and the same. So again, knowledge is power, but what they have is all of these deeds, this paper that identifies you through your DNA. If you don't recollect it, if you don't collect it, if you don't bring it back into your world, it's out there in the public. And what I call it is I call it a public easement. If you abandon your DNA to the public, you become a public charge. You do. We do. We all do. If we don't reclaim our DNA, if we don't get that back into our possession, if we don't occupy our own bodies, so to speak, then we become a charge to the public. And that's the problem here, is that instead of running away from the name, what we have to do is understand how to reclaim our lives from the church. Think about it this way. It's almost like a basket being dropped off on the steps of the church, an abandoned child. That's kind of what this is like. If we don't reclaim our lives, we're always under the care of the church wardens. Always. Right. For our entire life. Yeah.
Well, I guess the following question would be, how is this possible to do this? Because I understand the basic concept, but where would you start to learn how to do this, to get your life back, given back to you and your freedom?
Well, between you and I would help you do it one-on-one.
Yeah, I know.
I know, but I mean, for anybody else, I mean, if they want to go to my website and start and learn some of this stuff, they need to go there and they need to invest a little bit. Just like this. I mean, I've listened to your stuff for years, and that's the only way I got to where I am. I mean, I had to let go of a lot of ideas, so I had basically the eyes to see. I wasn't tainted anymore by a belief system. And that's what the first thing you have to do is get rid of all your belief system. But the reality is this is all mechanics. It's all mechanics. The only one that has a right, when you go back to the very first cause, which is that zygote, the fertilized ovum, the very point where you were created, that's your paramount claim upon your existence. And by claiming that moment, you also own all subsequent happenings. So if you go back to the very first moment and claim that DNA, then everything that you produce through that DNA, which is the capital and labor of your existence, is called industrial property. When you claim that, nobody can make an alternative claim. The idea that this weird trust exists, that there's this Sedekv trust from 1666, trusts don't exist when there's a singular owner. So everybody that wants to talk trust with me, they need to just back off, because there is no trust when there's a singular owner. So my question to you, Jordan, is how many people own your life? How many people have a legitimate claim upon your life? Only one, and that's you. So if there's only one owner, there is no trust. If there's anything more than one owner, then there's the potential trust to exist. And see, that's why all the people that are chasing all this trust property and stuff, their very first premise is off. If your first step is in the wrong direction, I don't care what you find along the way, it's wrong. So, and it's very simple. Claim the first moment, claim that circumpunct moment where the zygote, where mom and dad's DNA first come together and your unique DNA is generated from that moment. And by the way, it's not as difficult as it sounds. But when you do that, and then you relink the vessel, the mothership back to you, now the Madonna and child, the mother and child, all that stuff gets relinked. And ultimately you become the owner of your life, and nobody will ever bother you again. I guarantee you. It's so weird, and this is mechanics. It's not a belief system. It's just mechanics. So
do you have information on your website that is written that people can sit and read and try and figure it out for themselves?
Yeah. So in fact, this letter, everything that I've ever done is available at that site. And again, I'll take people one-on-one, and you would be a special case for me anyway, just to get your stuff done. But anybody else, they can go to, www.kurtisrichardkallenbach.xyz and start listening to this stuff. Seriously, just start listening to it and change the ideas about religion, or change your ideas about patriotism. None of it exists. It doesn't exist in nature. Why would it exist in reality? It doesn't. So we need to let go of all that stuff, because ultimately, remember that the father side of the equation is your government. Your mind is your government, and your body is the universe that needs to be governed by the mind. So to be, and I don't use this word very often, but to be a sovereign in your existence, you have to have the government in your own mind watching over the body, which is the universe. Remember that spark in the heart, in that SA node, the sinoatrial node of the heart, wherever it comes from, if it comes from somewhere out in space and enters that place, that's the sun, or the center of your universe. And so all the cells in your body are the constituency of your existence. But the seat of your government is in your mind, in the temple. And if you don't govern yourself, If you believe something erroneous, like there's a savior, or if you believe in religion, or if you believe in some external government, then that's going to be your government. So sovereignty is basically, it only extends from the top of your head to the tips of your toes. That's your sovereignty. You're not sovereign outside of that at all. Everything is within the self. So again, these are very simple concepts for people. You know, I'm not sovereign over anything you do, Jordan. I don't have any claim to anything you do, because my kingdom is from the top of my head to the tips of my toes. That's it.
Yep.
There's nothing beyond that. So
again, that goes back to concepts in Judaism. That I've heard those basically same concepts and ideas you're expressing in Judaism. That you are the kingdom. You know, from the crown of your head to the sole of your feet.
There you go.
And the mother is very important in distinguishing whether you are a Jew or not, is from the mother. All of this, of course, implies that there's a far, far deeper reason in Judaism for all of these, similar facts. It's because, Jews are usually very good at law and banking, and they go back, into the Middle Ages and to, ultimately back into the Middle East. And all of this is based on law, on commerce, on labor, on human beings. And of course, I have found out that our physical bodies are a security for the corporation. And anyone who works for a company, no matter how big the company is, like Ford Motor Company, for instance, if you're working in Africa for Ford Motor Company, it doesn't matter. You're still a Ford Motor Company employee. It doesn't matter where you are on the earth. Well, if you take all the people who work for Ford Motor Company or General Electric or anything else, if you take all the people, period, the people who sweep up at night to the president of the company, you are all members of the Ford Motor Company family. And therefore, in law, the whole group is referred to as the body social. The body social of the Ford Motor Company is everybody who works for it. It's called the body social. And therefore, if you are doing your job and they're using your body on the stock exchange for commerce, then you are a security for the body social. And so when you retire, which means at the end of the evening you go home after work, you retire, they give you social security. No, you are the security for the body social. So they're not giving you social security. You are the social security for the corporation. And so, I've been aware of hundreds of little interesting tidbits like this, and then to hear you explaining the even deeper, facets of this incredible world that we live in, we'll have to do it again. We'll have to come back on and do another couple of hours. And I really want to get into religion with you, especially into the Old and New Testament as it applies to maritime law, international business law, corporate law, and how the religions of the world are very heavily involved. I mean, this is why churches are divided into denominations, like 50s and 100s and 20s.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Well, here, one last thing I'll say this is for people just to wet their whistle on the weirdness of even belief systems. The Jewish calendar, because I started with some of the calendar ideas tonight. The Jewish calendar today says what? The year is what? 5776? 5,776? That's the Anno Mundi calendar. That's the Jewish calendar. The Anno Domini calendar says it's the year 2017. That's like 3,760 years apart. So the Jews are in the future by 3,760 years, because that's where the Old Testament carries them. The New Testament says it's the year 2017, but that's 3,760 years in the past. That's just, I mean, again, these are just arbitrary calendars. We live in the same moment, but the point is that they get to look back at us and go, oh, we can control the past. Yeah, but it's all on paper. It's all on paper.
Let me ask you this. Tell the audience very slowly where they can find your website and how to contact you. This is very important that people do this kind of research on their own. And if you've got all the great stuff there on the website, then tell everyone where to find your website and where and how to contact you or whatever. Because I know there are going to be a lot of smart people who want to follow up on this. So tell us where to find you.
There's the only website right now that I have up and running, it's been there for quite a while, is www.kurtisrichardkallenbach.xyz. Everything's there that they could possibly want. And, of course, they can contact me directly through that website or just go and email me directly at kurtiskallenbach@gmail.
But Kurtis is with a K, correct?
Yeah. My middle name is Richard. It's not Kurtis Christopher Kallenbach, which would be KKK. It's actually Kurtis Richard Kallenbach, but it's KURTISKALLENBACH @gmail.com.
Great. Let's do it again, Kurtis, and I want to thank you for being on the show, and I want to also thank American Freedom Radio for giving us an opportunity to be here. So
Thanks,
stay
Jordan.
tuned, and we'll be back next Saturday. Good night.
No rules, no rules, no taboo topics, no fear of doom, We are American Freedom Radio.